Hello and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and joining me here in the Murrieta studios is Dr. David Burns. Hi, David.
Hi, Fabrice.
Dr. David Burns has been a pioneer in the development of cognitive therapy, and he is the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 20 languages. He is an emeritus adjunct clinical professor of psychiatry at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Welcome to episode 126 of the Feeling Good podcast. We've talked about the 5 secrets of effective communication. We've done a number of episodes on those. The main series of episodes started with number 65 all the way to 70, and we've used those in other episodes as well. Those are like the main 5 secrets, but we also have some advanced secrets. I'll put the word secrets in quotes. And the ones we're going to talk about are A, changing the focus, B, multiple choice empathy, and C, positive reframing. Did I cover them all, David?
Yep.
All right. So let's start with changing the focus.
Well, let me just start at an even more primitive level here, and then we'll dive into changing the focus. Of all the things that we teach, I would say the 5 secrets of effective communication, as well as what we're going to teach today, is the hardest. These are some of the hardest things to learn. And it's almost like we're showing you how to play the piano. And so we'll sit down and it looks real easy, but for you to learn how to play the piano, you have to do an awful lot of practice and hard work.
Yeah.
And so that's true of the original 5 secrets. And it's even more true of these 3 advanced and more sophisticated secrets. And so if you want to really master them, this is more to give you a feel for them, to let you know that they exist and how they can be of help to you. But you might be having to read my book, Feeling Good, together and really practicing with these things and working at them, whether you're a therapist or a general citizen type, to learn to do them. You should not assume that it's going to be as easy as we make it sound. That's my opening statement. So we want to work on which one first? Changing the focus?
Changing the focus, yes.
Sometimes in a relationship, tension will come up. It could be a husband and wife or 2 partners who are arguing about something. And they keep trying to win the argument. And they keep contradicting each other. Now when you do changing the focus, you let go of the intellectual content that's going on between the 2 of you, and you try to bring to conscious awareness in a kindly way, a non-defensive way, that there's tension between the 2 of you. And you share how you're feeling and ask if they've noticed that and ask how they're feeling. And so it's bringing to conscious awareness that there's an elephant in the room, and maybe if we kindly talk about our feelings rather than give up on this argument that we were having, we'll get to a solution and close good feelings about each other much faster. And I have a metaphor for explaining this. I'm not sure the metaphor has ever helped anyone. But in my mind, it makes it perfectly clear. Let's say David and Fabrice are arguing, so we're arguing on the surface about this thing.
Right. So, well, David, you're just too controlling when we do these podcasts.
Yeah, or whatever it happens to be. But then underneath, there's this river of emotion. Fabrice has all of these feelings, and David has all of these feelings.
Yeah.
And nobody's dealing with those. We keep arguing.
Yeah.
And so when you use change the focus, you go down into that river of emotion rather than trying to win a battle up on the intellectual level. And we can come up with a lot of examples, but just to touch on it lightly, I mean, you and I used this technique, I thought, with good effectiveness today. Can I just kind of briefly mention what that was? Or
sure, go ahead.
The last time when we did the podcast, this kind of adversarial thing came up between the two of us. We got into a little bit of a kind of an argument, and edited out a portion of the podcast, and then I said, Fabrice, I feel like there's this little undercurrent of tension between the two of us that we haven't always had in the past. Maybe we could talk about that. And then today we got a chance to do it, and it turned out that you, Fabrice, had some kind of negative feelings toward David that were quite valid, and it was a little scary to talk about them, a little bit painful, but it was really, really kind of a relief. And by talking about, how you were feeling and how I was feeling in a respectful way, it seemed like the conflict kind of dissolved. The conflict turned out to be real easy to solve.
Yeah.
But that would be an example. But the reason that this is hard, even for therapists, is that therapists will even get into playing games with patients. Like the patient will argue and the therapist will argue back, and they'll keep trying to win some kind of argument that never goes anyplace. And it seems almost impossibly difficult for trained mental health professionals to learn how to do this, to say to the patient, I'm sensing there's kind of an elephant in the room right now, and that there's an awkwardness between the two of us. And I'm wondering how you're feeling. I'm feeling really uncomfortable, like we're fighting rather than working together. Do you notice that too, Jim or Sarah, whoever the other person is? Tell me how you're experiencing it. And when you bring it then to conscious awareness, the conflict cannot continue. This is a game ender. For the conflict to continue, both parties have to agree to hide their feelings and keep arguing, or whatever the game is that's going on. Maybe you can explain it better.
Well, this could happen sometimes where, you could be having this intellectual argument about, how to do the dishes, for example.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not about the dishes.
Yeah.
And so if one of the people involved, say, it sounds like we're a little bit angry at each other here.
Yeah.
The other person has now an option, which is to go down to that emotional level and say, yeah, I'm kind of angry. And that's an opening to talk about, well, yeah, here are these emotions, and bring them back to where they come from, wherever that is.
That's right.
But sometimes the other person will say, I'm not angry.
Yeah.
And they'll keep defending how they want to do the dishes.
That's one of the pitfalls with this technique, and that's why it's hard to learn these techniques. And one thing that I have found that's helpful to me is if you can do it with humility and take the blame yourself, rather than being accusational toward the other person.
Yeah.
And my way I was thinking in my interaction with you today is you were feeling kind of annoying with David because David's maybe too opinionated or too controlling or something like that. And I think what was helpful was I saw that your criticisms of me were very valid. I mean, those are personality traits that I have, if you want to believe in personality traits, that are definitely flaws that I have. And so if you kind of convey to the other person, I'm sensing that you're kind of annoyed with me, and I think I've probably been acting like a bit of a jerk here, and tell me how you're feeling. Then the person won't get adversarial, but without the humility, this technique won't be effective.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's for sure. If instead of saying, sounds like, there's some anger, or I'm feeling a little bit angry myself, you go, well, you're angry.
Yeah.
It becomes an accusation.
Yeah. But I have found this to be tremendously helpful in therapy and in life. But it's frightening. That's another point about it. You see, humans, although we're very aggressive, most people I work with are conflict phobic, including myself.
Yeah.
And so people just avoid talking about the tension, and then they just keep acting out their anger instead.
Well, people are already in the conflict. It's avoiding acknowledging that there is a conflict.
Yeah.
We're not in conflict. We're just talking about the dishes.
Yeah.
With this high-pitched voice,
Yeah, right, right. Well, I hope we brought that to life a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say that the power of this technique is it gives you a rapid way out of the conflict and into a more productive relationship.
Yeah, and it may work, and if it doesn't work, use something else. It's just like the old, fail as quickly as you can.
Yeah, right. Perfect.
How about this multiple choice empathy?
Is
that like a quiz or something?
Yeah, and you can also call it multiple choice disarming. Mm-hmm. And I can explain it in a simple way, but I'll give you an application that's very sophisticated and fantastically effective if you can learn to do it. But that's a big if. Essentially, multiple choice empathy means like saying to the other person, I'm getting a feeling that you're upset right now, and based on what you told me, I'm wondering if you might be feeling kind of sad or down, or maybe anxious or frustrated or inadequate, or maybe discouraged, or even a little bit ticked off. Do any of those feelings ring a bell? That would be a simplistic version of multiple choice empathy.
Yeah.
Multiple choice disarming would be, I've been trying to figure out what maybe I've been doing that's turning you off. And I'm thinking it might be A, it might be B, it might be C.
Yeah.
Does any of that ring a bell?
Yeah.
It's a way of helping someone who doesn't know how they're feeling, or they're not readily willing to disclose their feelings.
That could work with teenagers, for example.
Yeah. Now, the way you would do it, say, the way I've used it, the most extreme is when you have a teenager who refuses to talk. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when I have supervised psychiatric residents at Stanford, they'd say, can you help us with children we're teaching at Packard Children's Hospital, because we have a lot of kids there who refuse to talk during sessions. They have the eating disorders, kids with anorexia nervosa and things like that, and often they'll refuse to talk. And I say, I'm not allowed to really supervise you there because I'm an adult shrink, but I can give you some general teaching about how to get people to talk, and you can use this multiple choice empathy, like say you're with a young woman, 15-year-old girl or young lady with anorexia nervosa, and she refuses to talk during a session. You might say something like this. Let's give this imaginary patient a name. What's a good name?
Rose.
Rose, I notice you don't seem to be wanting to talk to me during today's session, and I'm asking myself why that might be. And I'm thinking about times that I haven't wanted to talk, or some of the common reasons, and I'm going to share with you. I don't know what the reason is, but here are my theories. One is that when someone doesn't listen to me, I hate to talk to them. Like if they argue with me and try to control me, and I've seen that actually happens between you and your parents and you and the hospital staff. You try to tell them that you don't want to eat, and then they kind of don't listen and tell you what to do. You have to eat, and they argue, and they try to control you, and maybe I've done that to you too. And if that's going on, then I could see exactly why you don't want to talk to me. Like, why should you talk to someone who won't listen? And then another reason, sometimes I don't want to talk to someone, is maybe I'm ashamed of something. And so I don't want to, I'm afraid of being judged. Another reason, sometimes I haven't talked to someone when I've been pissed off at them, and I kind of punish them with my silence type of thing, rather than shouting at them or acting out. And there could be other reasons too. And I'm wondering if any of those ring a bell. You don't even have to talk to me, but maybe just wriggle your right hand index finger if any of them ring a bell. Now, if you do that with kindness and compassion and humility, what the students have told me is 100% of the time that the child just suddenly opens up and starts talking. Now, here's why it's hard to learn, because notice the goal is not to get the child to talk. See, that's what most people listening to the show, they won't be able to let go of that goal if they have a daughter or a son who refuses to talk or a friend.
Yeah.
But with this technique, you're not trying to get them to talk. You're taking the blame yourself and giving them multiple choices of why they don't want to talk. You're not trying to persuade them or telling them they're doing anything wrong. In fact, you're telling them that if they don't want to talk, it's totally understandable.
Yeah. I would add to that you don't have to give a sevenfold multiple choice. You can just say, especially like if it's a spouse, you probably know what's going on. You don't have to guess very much, but they're not willing to tell you. I've had this with a client whose spouse was sulking, and I said, well, do you know why? And the client said, well, yeah, I think I do. And so when you ask your spouse, what's going on, what does your spouse respond? And the client said, oh, I've already told you.
Yeah.
So I said, well, why don't you try to say, well, I'm imagining that it's because I did this and this, and that is kind of pissing you off. Am I right? And so just propose one thing and then say yes or no.
Yeah, that's right.
Am I getting you right?
Yeah, that's right. And again, if you do it with humility, it will really help. Like, is that why you don't want to talk to me? And if so, I could totally understand, because I have been acting kind of like a dick or I've been kind of nasty. I've been kind of control, whatever it is. So you're essentially giving the person permission to be upset with you, and you're siding with their upset. You're siding with their unwillingness to talk.
Yeah.
It's really a powerful technique. It's a very delicate technique that actually has great power behind it.
Okay. And the last one is the positive reframing. Now, we've used this term before when it came to agenda setting.
Yeah.
Right. Are we talking about the same thing, or is that something different?
This is a different use of positive reframing, although they have a lot in common. Positive reframing is when you're in conflict with somebody. We generally think about that as bad. Yeah. Like we're having an argument, we're having a fight. That means we have a bad relationship. And positive reframing means you put a positive spin on it. So, for example, you and I had this little kind of fight today about you were kind of pissed off at David for a variety of valid reasons, very valid reasons. And then what I was telling myself and telling you is we can use this to develop a better relationship and to develop a better podcast where we're more collaborative. We're working together. So it's the idea of putting things in a positive context. Now, if you do it in a manipulative way, it won't work. You have to genuinely believe it. But to give you an extreme example of it, and we mentioned this on a previous podcast, I'll just give the super short version, but I once had a patient who I couldn't stand at all. I really disliked him intensely, and I dreaded having him come in to sessions. And I have a rule that if you don't like a patient, you have to tell them immediately, but you have to do it in a way that they won't lose face, that make them feel terrific. And so I used positive reframing to tell him. I said, Alex, or whatever his name was, this is hard for me to tell you, but actually I've been developing a great dislike for you, and I've been hoping you'll drop out of therapy because you come and you smell like urine, and you leave urine smell on the furniture, and the other patients get upset, and you don't do homework, and you talk about how much it would be fun it would be if we went out raping women together and getting drunk together every night. And it just disgusts me, when you talk like that. And I've been real ashamed of the fact that I don't like you. And then I thought, my gosh, this is so neat that I don't like you, Alex, because I actually do like you, but I'm feeling pushed away. And that's what you came to therapy for, because you were lonely and couldn't connect with people. And now that's happening between the two of us. Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited about it because we can talk this through and kill that dragon and develop a terrific relationship. And he was just fine with it. He came back. He was all cleaned up the next week, and he started doing his psychotherapy homework and turned into a delightful person to work with. But we usually don't think of it like that. When we dislike someone, we think this is bad. And so I should refer this to some other therapist, or if you're not a therapist, I should get rid of this person. And certainly there are times that you want to terminate relationships that aren't going to be healthy or positive for you. But there's a lot of conflicts that we have with people we do love and like and respect and admire, but we still will fight from time to time. And if you can put the positive reframing there and just say, hey, this is awkward for me because I like you so much, but I'm so ticked off at you right now, and let's talk it through, and we can use this to develop a more beautiful, a deeper relationship. And boy, when people hear that message, it just it takes the edge off of the hostility, and then it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So let me make sure that I get the philosophy behind this.
Yeah.
Is that when you're having a conflict, the gem in the manure is that this is the opportunity to solve the conflict, get closer,
not to solve the conflict,
to understand each other.
Yeah. To develop. See, I define intimacy as the capacity of two people to share negative feelings in a respectful way that brings them closer together rather than splitting them apart. It's like nuclear fusion. Mm-hmm. But most people think of it like we're going to be split apart if we have a conflict. Mm-hmm. Like anyone, you can meet a new person and feel very happy about that person. I met a computer programmer. He's going to help me develop an app, a feeling good app. And someone told me, oh, he's tremendous. He's a mover and shaker. And I met him. He was all positive. And then all of a sudden it turned out he decided he didn't want to work collaboratively. And then he went and took my idea and he's developing it on his own. And that was very, very painful for me. And now I can't even figure out how it relates to what we were saying before. There was some linkage there.
I don't know. Positive reframing. Did you have a conflict with him?
Yeah, but it was one that we couldn't resolve. So I was trying to figure out what is it's probably not a very, 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 very good example, but sometimes when you're working with someone and you have a conflict and then you talk it through, then you've got a much better relationship than you had before.
Right. And I've seen that happen in my own life a number of times. It's true that, when you stop the actual fighting and you look for ways to better understand each other, you come out of it stronger.
Yeah. It's like after a broken bone, then it heals stronger than ever was initially. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the idea behind it. But you have to really, really believe in it. But I've had patients I've had very severe fights with that were extraordinarily critical of me. And in almost all of those cases, they ended up being some of the people I liked the most, had the most meaningful relationships with. But people don't think about it that way because we think about love and hate as opposites.
And they're not. They're not.
Yeah. If you have a loving relationship, you won't fight. And if you fight, it means you don't have a loving relationship. And this involves the fusion of positive and negative feelings in your relationship. Yeah. And it's just a great tool because, in my experience, it acts as a self-fulfilling prophecy most of the time. As I mentioned, not 100% of the time, but most of the time. And it's to me, it's just a joy to be able to bring positivity and light into a relationship where you're both feeling angry and mistrustful. And the reason it's a good tool is because even most therapists don't know how to do this. They've never thought of this. They think, oh, if it's not going well, this person needs a new therapist. Yeah. I say if it's not going well, this is a great opportunity to make a tremendous therapy.
Name it, yeah.
You've experienced that too?
Yeah. Well, I think those are great adjuncts to the 5 secrets. And do
you have any parting words or reservations or?
No. I think that we have too small of an arsenal in interpersonal therapy, interpersonal communication. So anything that we can add that is useful like this, more power to everyone.
Absolutely.
So thank you, David.
Thank you, Fabrice.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this podcast under the blog page, and where you can leave your comments and questions. The website has an abundance of resources for therapists as well as non-therapists, including books, workshops, a list of online training groups around the world, and much more. Theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.